crime and corporate transparency bill, and in addition we're introducing a provision to extend the SFO's pre-investigation powers.
All right, people alive.
Stuart C. MacDonald. Number 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
My man making an order at a Chinese takeout.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. By convention, whether the law officers have been asked to provide advice and the contents of such advice are, as I said earlier, not disclosed outside government. This convention enables candid legal advice to be given.
Stuart C. MacDonald. Mr. Speaker, why is the prospect of a Section 35 order not raised at
Let's
any
get this
point
clown
prior
show
to the bill being
started.
overwhelmingly passed
Yeah,
by
boy.
the Scottish Parliament? What alternatives did she look at? And when will she set out the changes to the bill that she would want to see before the government would revoke the Section 35 order? These are simple
Might
questions.
have kicked things off a bit early, but it's fine.
UK government respects the Scottish Parliament's ability to legislate within its competence on devolved areas. The government is committed to working together with the DAs and strengthening the union of the UK.
Mary Kelly Foy.
Morning all, or afternoon all. No, still morning. Morning all.
Mr. Speaker, we're committed to delivering justice for victims of hate crime. All CPS prosecutors are trained on hate crime, and its specialist prosecutors help to lead this work.
It's not a lot of CPS people though, is there? So that's a big problem because you guys ain't prosecuting cases.
The latest figures show that the CPS has prosecuted nearly 13,000 hate crime offences.
How many
with a
hate crimes
charge
have we
rate
had?
Of 86%, and importantly, a conviction rate of 84%.
Mary Kelly Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As
Where's the big man
the
out there?
start of LGBTQ History Month, it was shocking to see the year-end figures for hate crime, with a 41% increase in offences targeting people's sexuality and a 56% increase in offences targeting people's transgender identity. Can the Attorney General tell me what her government is doing to stop the prejudice and fear being stoked against the LGBTQ community, which is leading to this rise in crime?
I mean, the government are helping to stoke it, so... Geez, there he is, the big man, the short king.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can tell the Honourable Lady that in her area, the CPS in the North East is particularly successful in getting uplifts to sentences in relation to hate crime, and that over the last rolling year to date, they have been successful in obtaining uplifts in 90% of cases. The question that the Honourable Lady raises is an important one, and the CPS is working incredibly hard in that area.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out the British Sign Language interpretation of proceedings is available to watch on Parliament Live.
Okay, we know.
When you're ready, Mr. Davis, we'll start. Kirsty Blackman.
What?
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to join me in sending condolences to the First Minister of Wales on the death of his wife, Claire.
Yeah, his wife passed away, I think, this week. It's pretty tragic.
From the warmth of the tributes made, how much she will be missed. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Kirsty Blackman.
Oh, look at me, I have meetings. Oh, look at me, I'm doing my job. Oh.
As the Prime Minister reaches 100 days in office,
Watch the language, guys.
having pledged a government... Having pledged...
Does the Speaker step in? You going to step in, big man?
Having pledged a government marked by integrity, what are his thoughts on the UK being one of only 5 countries, along with Oman, Azerbaijan, Myanmar and Qatar, that has seen a decrease in Transparency International's corruption index score since last year?
Yeah, these are titans, These are top dons, Oman, Qatar, Azerbaijan, this is the top pantheon of really world countries. And, who would not want to be a part of a group including Qatar, Oman and Azerbaijan, Just, France aren't in that group, They didn't make the cut, so it tells you a lot.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in fact, there's widespread recognition and support for the UK's approach to transparency and indeed tackling...
Big man, yeah, when you were part of the Treasury, whoops, that's an awkward frame, you guys let a sanctioned Russian warlord, okay, a sanctioned Russian warlord sue a journalist in the UK. You know, when you talk about transparency and all of this stuff, right? You guys let a warlord who was sanctioned, okay, try and sue a UK journalist, right? So when you talk about integrity and all of this stuff, right? Where's that at?
Corruption. Indeed, the most recent report from the FATF body commended the UK for the steps that it had taken.
Sir Robert Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I refer to my entry in the Register of Interests. Arts Council England was established to increase access to great art for the population. There's real concern and anger that their current funding decisions do the exactly reverse of that on the basis of inadequate evidence and a lack of transparency in the process. Will my right honourable friend meet with me and other concerned members to discuss the situation in which centres of national excellence like English National Opera are at risk of closure and discuss a way in which we can reform the operations of Arts Council, which many people no longer feel is fit for purpose?
You know, Tories don't care about high arts. That's the main problem. You know, that's who typically criticises them. You know, so that's you know, they don't care about that sort of stuff. So why would they try and fund it? You know, I think it was in Barnsley where they had one of their kind of main training areas for theatre people. I don't know the exact terms, but you know, they were looking for funding from the government and they just didn't get it in order to kind of help kids get into the creative industries. It's just tragic.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that this is an issue that my honourable friend deeply cares about.
How's the audio, by the way?
The decisions made by the Arts Council are taken at arm's length from government. DCMS ministers have been assured that that process was robust, but I will ensure that he gets a meeting with a relevant minister to discuss this important matter further.
I really wish he didn't have Harry Potter glasses.
The Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister?
Oh yeah, put your bets in. Put your what questions do you think he's going to ask about? I can definitely see Nadim Zahawi, but quickly just comment. What questions do you think are going to appear?
In his words about the First Minister of Wales and the sad loss of his wife. Everybody, I think, knows just how close they were, and I know that he's absolutely devastated by her loss at the weekend. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister briefly emerged from his hibernation at the weekend, he raised more questions than answers. So, in the interests of integrity and accountability, can he set the record straight? Did his now former chair tell government officials that he was under investigation by the taxman before or after the Prime Minister appointed him?
Okay, that's a good start.
Mr. Speaker, I appointed the independent advisor to investigate this matter fully.
Dodge.
He has set out his findings in detail over the weekend, and on receipt of those findings, I took action, and I'd refer the honourable gentleman to the independent advisor's report.
Dodge.
Oh, come on. Anyone picking up a newspaper in July last year would have known that HMRC and the National Crime Agency were investigating months before he appointed him. Mr. Speaker, The Independent, 6th of July, new Chancellor's finances secretly investigated by the National Crime Agency. The Observer, 3 days later, 9th of July, revealed officials raised flag over tax affairs before he was appointed Chancellor. The Financial Times, the next day, 10th of July, pressure bills to explain his finances. Is he saying his officials hid this information from him, or was he just too incurious to ask any questions?
That's something Phil kind of mentioned the other day, which is how does he know, right? How does he know about the tax scandals that Zahawi was involved in, but Rishi Sunak doesn't? And if anything, Rishi Sunak is the guy who knew the least. Yeah, I mean, the Speaker can, I think, ask him to answer the question, but it's kind of ridiculous because our Speaker's, you know, the weakest man in the room at all times. But you know, it's the fact that it is I think almost public knowledge. The HMRC botched a Freedom of Information request when you know the FT asked, was it Nadim Zahawi? HMRC said no, it's a backbencher, but Nadim Zahawi was a part of the cabinet at the time. He was Education Secretary, so they really did drop the ball.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said before at the dispatch box, the usual appointments process was followed with respect to the Minister without portfolio. No issues were raised with me at the time of his appointment, but as the independent advisor's report makes clear, there was a serious breach of the ministerial code, and that's why I took decisive action on receipt of that report.
So, in relation to his former chair, his defence is, nobody told me, I didn't know, I didn't ask any questions. Is the Prime Minister now also going to claim that he was the...
Order, Prime Minister. Mr Gullis, we heard enough last week. I can't hear what you're saying.
Yo, kick out Gullis, man. That guy's a fraud.
I might not be able to hear what you're saying, but I can certainly see your mouth moving. It'll be moving outside if it continues.
Yeah, fuck that guy, honestly. I don't swear much, but yeah, Gullis
So
is
for his former
a
chair,
knobhead.
nobody told me, I didn't know, I didn't ask any questions. Is the Prime Minister now also going to claim that he's the only person completely unaware of serious allegations of bullying against the Deputy Prime Minister before he appointed him?
No, I would have said, is the Prime Minister's policy see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil? Because my man's avoiding asking the tough questions here.
Prime Minister.
So, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman asked these questions about what was known, and I followed due process. I appointed an independent advisor as soon as
But surely you were aware of the situation. Like, are you telling me you don't read the Independent, you don't read the Observer, you don't read the FT? You definitely read the FT, big man. Let's be honest here. You definitely read the FT. So the FT spoke about the story last year. So you would have been aware that there was some stink around Nadim Zahawi. So you should have asked your officials, look, I'm going to put him in the cabinet. You know, is there an issue, surrounding him? But what he's using is the dodge of, I followed the proper process and I ordered an investigation once I knew. But the thing is, we all knew last year. That's the problem.
Was made aware of, as soon as I was made aware of new information, the independent advisors conducted this process. But if he is so concerned about what people are saying and is so concerned about behaviour in public life, then recently one of his own MPs was forced to speak out because being in his party had reminded her of being in an abusive relationship.
What the? What? Who?
And then
What is he talking
own
about?
office was caught undermining her.
Hold up. What's this about? Anyone know? Anyone know what's he talking about?
To be supporting her and her colleagues, but if he can't be trusted to stand up for the women in his party, he can't be trusted to stand up for Britain.
That's a bit of a stretch, but okay.
Mr. Speaker, at the last count, the Deputy Prime Minister was facing 24 separate allegations of bullying. According to recent reports,
I think it's 27, I think it's 27.
The complainants were physically sick. One says they were left suicidal.
Jeez.
How would he feel if one of his friends or relatives was being forced to work for a bully simply because the man at the top was too weak to do anything about it?
I was going to say, due process, we're following the process, it's being investigated, stop talking about it, we've got to wait for the Sue Gray report.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed he didn't say anything about why one of his own MPs describes being in his own party. And Mr. Niffer, when I was made aware of formal complaints...
Is it Duffield? Is it Rosie Duffield? I think she'd be the only one. I don't know who it'd be.
I instructed a leading independent KC to conduct an investigation because I take action when these things happen. But what did he say at the weekend? He said at the weekend that hate had been allowed to spread unchallenged in the Labour Party under his predecessor.
He should never have said that. His Sunak's desperation to bury what's his face? To bury Jeremy Corbyn has really come back to haunt him in this bit.
Speaking as if he wasn't even there. But he was sitting right next to him, supporting him for 4 long years, not challenging. And it is typical of him, Mr. Speaker, declining to lead.
Oh, it was Duffield. Okay. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for Duffield, so... I had a feeling it was her because she likes... I'm not going to speak too much about her, but yeah, it was Duffield by the sounds of it.
Sitting on the fence, carping from the sidelines, and never standing up for a principle that matters.
Bro, why are you stepping so close to the mic and shouting? Like, are you a moron? Like, genuinely, the two biggest issues that people, like, fair enough, my breathing can be heavy at times, right? Fine, whatever, right? If I change the mic, I'll fix the issue. My man, like, stop stepping so close to the mic and don't hit the table. Honestly. Honestly.
5 minutes. Okay, stop. Shh. I want to hear both sides, and I'm not going to be interrupted by either side. And
You
I'm
keep getting interrupted,
looking
Chief.
for people who want to continue this.
They
because
keep
we will
interrupting
sort
you.
it out today.
And they keep
Yes,
interrupting the people.
Speaker,
But you do
he's
nothing.
just like one of his predecessors who treated questions about conduct as something to brush off, who thought that ducking responsibility was a perfectly reasonable response for a Prime Minister. At least in fairness, his predecessor didn't go around pretending he was a paragon of integrity and accountability.
His
on
his
that-
predecessor was Liz Truss, so no, she didn't. But I don't think she was involved in a lot of scandals. And she did tank the economy. You could argue that's a scandal, but we're talking like other kinds of scandals. I don't know. His predecessor was Liz Truss, despite the fact that she was there for like 60 days or whatever.
That subject, was it a coincidence that the two people who arranged an £800,000 line of credit for the former Prime Minister were both shortlisted for plum jobs at the BBC and the British Council?
So that's a story. The British Council thing, I'm going to talk about that soon. I've got the article up and I've got a couple other bits and pieces up about it. It's very interesting. It's very interesting that Simon Case's advice did not. Simon Case did not know that Johnson's cousin was up for a role potentially at the CEO of this company. I can't remember. It's to do with education though. I'll have to look at specifics once I cover the video. But the simple fact is, right. Yeah, Mr. Speaker loves threatening. You know, he's like the moderators in the Discord on occasion, never dealing with problem people. But yeah, you know, the whole situation with Johnson is very slimy, and we're going to cover that very soon.
Prime Minister.
Hold on, I missed the question.
For the former Prime Minister were both shortlisted for plum jobs at the BBC and the British Council.
I didn't hear a question in that.
Mr. Speaker, as we addressed previously, the appointments process for the BBC chairman is rigorous, it's transparent, it's set
It's nonsense, absolute nonsense. We didn't know about this 800k loan facility.
out in a public code of conduct, and indeed, was fully supported not just by an expert panel members, but also by the cross-party DCMS Select Committee, including where Labour members described the appointment as impressive.
Honestly, whichever Labour members did that are absolute morons. Because the guy donated £400,000 to the Tory party. It's very clear where his allegiance stood. It was to the Conservative Party, and he has kind of caused a lot more issues, I think, to the BBC than first thought. But you know, the fact is, this guy, he's a Tory. You know, that sharp guy, he's a Tory. And you know, any Labour member, like MPs who gave him credit or whatever, absolute morons. Especially because we don't actually know who gave the loan. Johnson's cousin was a loan guarantor, which would mean if Johnson didn't pay back the loan, essentially his cousin would step in. What we don't know is who actually gave Johnson the money, and I think that's the bigger story here.
But Mr. Speaker, back this week in terms of what is actually happening to the people of this country, he voted this week with the unions to oppose minimum safety levels. He voted with
Nonsense.
Just Stop Oil to water down the public order bill. And what do the unions and Just Stop Oil have in common? They bankroll him and his party, Mr. Speaker.
Did Just Stop Oil donate to the Tory party? I didn't know that. If they do, does anyone know?
So while he sides with extremist protesters and union bosses, we stand up for hard-working Britons and school children.
Can you stand up for nothing, mate? Let's be honest, apart from Tory donors and rich people.
After 13 years in power, trying to blame the Labour Party for his failure to sort out the strikes it's rank pathetic. The Tory party's addiction to sleaze and scandal has done huge damage to this country, and the cost to the public keeps adding up. We've got a justice system letting murderers walk the streets. Heart attack victims...
Why is Dominic Raab? What's this about? Like, what are you disagreeing with here, Chief? We've already seen this play out. What are you disagreeing with here, big man?
Hours for an ambulance.
Do you know what I mean? What an absolute moron. What's he saying? Like, speak into a microphone, numbnuts.
An economy that's shrinking quicker than his leadership.
Bruh.
And even...
Okay, that one was good. Yeah, that was a good line considering the UK are forecast to be minus. It's not minus 0.2 anymore. It's minus 0.6. So yeah, that's not very good, is it? It's not very good at all.
I couldn't quite believe it when I saw that his government is expecting taxpayers to pay the legal fees for the member for Uxbridge defending himself over his lockdown rule breaking.
Boris Johnson, member of Uxbridge.
£250,000. Surely even this Prime Minister can put his foot down, stand up to his old boss and tell him he made the mess, he can pick up the bill.
His delivery, Starmer's delivery, is like a really just a C-tier actor. He made the mess so he can pick up the bill. You just work on your delivery, Chief,
Mr. Speaker, he can't stand up to his union bosses. He can't stand up for Britain's school children today. And he can't
What's impacting British school children more, okay? Riddle with this, gang. The strikes going on today, which are disruptive, okay? Or the lack of teachers, which is a huge problem, the increasing workload on teachers, the loss of a lot of veteran teachers who have left the industry, the schools that are crumbling, the textbooks that are very old, the class sizes that are around the 30 mark. What's more damaging, a day or a few days of strikes, or that situation I just laid out for you? 30 plus kids in a classroom, massive shortages when it comes to facilities, no free school meals, yes, that's very right, Conservator. No free school meals, a massive shortage across the board, schools that are potentially falling apart because the government haven't invested the money into them, school teachers stressed beyond belief. What's damaging the teachers more, like audience? Could you guys let me know here? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like it's the Conservative government that are damaging school children. This is the party, let's not forget here, that had to be bullied by Marcus Rashford into providing free school meals over the summer. For Marcus Rashford, a footballer who should not have to do this. He should not have to bully the freaking government into making a decision, the right decision. Like my man's out here, carrying the whole country. It felt like at one point. But yeah, honestly, it's just madness. And how is Labour to blame for the strikes? I mean, exactly. Remember Dame Edna? Not really my time when she ruled British TV, but surely, I'm not going to. She's closely associated with what's his face, John Major. So the issue is that Starmer he spent too much time in courts, and he said he hates the House of Commons the way it's set up. He would work well in the EU, and I don't even think I don't even know. Like, it's just he doesn't. He's got no charisma. He's got no riz. He's got nothing. Like, the way he speaks. Like, honestly, it takes time. It takes practice. I know. But like, there's no way my man was doing presentations, in front of the CPS and talking like he's like a bored admin person. Genuinely, like, I think I could do a better presentation than he can without any training or expertise. It's genuinely not hard to have some energy, or to at least work on your delivery. Like, his delivery is poor. It's so poor. Sunak's not much better, but it's just, if you look at the front bench there, I reckon, I don't know a lot of these people, but definitely know, God, I can't remember their names, but Emily Thornberry would do a better job. Angela Rayner would do a better job. Even Rachel Reeves would do a better job. I don't know much about these two here on the left, but I'd wager they'd probably do a better job. It's just Starmer's got, like, there's something missing. There's no energy there, no spark. It's just very boring.
Stand up for the women in his party, Mr. Speaker. We're getting on. We're halving inflation.
My man, like, aren't there like multiple sleaze allegations against creeps in the Conservative Party? Like, you had the tractor guy. You had there was like, I think, one or two others. Isn't there one who's been? Wasn't there a Conservative MP charged with rape a while ago? Like, genuinely, like, my man's talking about the Labour Party not protecting women. Like, dude, have you looked at your party, Chief? Have you looked at your mandem? Like, they don't know boundaries, Chief. It's not good.
The economy, we're reducing debt, we're cutting waiting lists.
You're not reducing debt. You've increased the debt. Oh, it went to court last week. Oh, has there been any update, QA?
And we're stopping the boat while he can't even...
You're not stopping the boats. The channel crossings have increased because you won't set up a facility in France. You absolutely... Oh, that's one. Chris Pincher. Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. Oh my God, like, this is just bro, like, he's just talking nonsense.
Figure out what he believes in. We'll keep delivering for Britain.
And you know, that's another problem with Starmer, I guess, is the biggest, you know, phrase associated with Starmer to the people, you know, they do the weird word bubble thing, is don't know. They don't know what he's about, and he's got to figure that out soon. He's running out of time. You know, he's doing well in polling, but I think that will close up a bit during the election debates if Starmer hasn't got a message for people. But with Sunak, you know, he's just so slimy. Like, he just reminds me of Michael Gove a bit. He just seems disingenuous. Now, you know, during the Tory debates, I think he looked a lot better when he was the voice of reason. Now he's just like looking for childish arguments, I think. Especially when you look at the sleaze on this side of the house, all the stories and things like that. Madness, especially the stuff they said about Rayner as well. Jesus.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that the integrated care boards must prioritise...
You got BS and AS, before Sunak and after Sunak. Audrey. No update, it was just the start of a hearing in England. Some found guilty. Oh, rape's only 1%. Do we have a name of the MP at least? If he's gone to court, is there no name? Because if there's no name, that is shocking. Absolutely shocking. Like, my man's a danger.
More access to new GP services, especially in places like South Derbyshire, where new housing estates are being built at the fastest rate in England, and in particular on the new brownfield development of Drakelow.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to increasing the number of doctors in general practice, and last year saw the highest ever number of doctors accept a GP training place.
You know what's funny is, right, the government have actually told universities to stop training as many GPs as they are. The pandemic years were an anomaly because the government didn't set a cap, but you know, now they've set a cap. They've told universities that they will fine the universities if they accept too many, I think, medical students or you know, students to become doctors. And, you know, he can talk about how many they're training in record numbers. How many have left the field, Chief? You know, we're talking net numbers here. You know, going full maths nerd. When we're talking about the net number of doctors, how many have left compared to how many we're getting in? A lot more are leaving, Chief. Let's be honest.
BMA are consulted each year on the funding of GP services, and my honourable friend will know that the NHS has a statutory duty to ensure sufficient medical services, including general practice, in each local area.
Leader of the SNP, Stephen Flynn.
Let's go.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to pass on my condolences and indeed those of my party to the First Minister of Wales and also
really
to
weird.
the family, friends and colleagues of firefighter Barry Martin, who so sadly lost his life following the blaze in Edinburgh just last week. Mr. Speaker, we've just marked the 3-year anniversary of Brexit, and we've learned...
my man mentioning the word, the thing that must not be named in the House of Commons, otherwise bad things will happen. My man's brave.
So, they'll not be cheering in a moment, Mr. Speaker.
He's got jokes.
We have learned three things. The UK's trade deficit has grown. The economy is being hit to the tune of £100 billion each year. And of course, we know that the UK's economy is expected to be the worst performing of all advanced nations. Does the Prime Minister still believe...
You know, it's not even just, you know, if you're talking advanced nations, are you talking about the OECD top 20 or are you talking about the G7? Because we're doing the worst, we're going to do worse than Russia this year, and I would have made that point.
That the UK can afford not to be in the European Union.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if you actually look at it, since Brexit, the UK has grown exactly the same as Germany has, Mr. Speaker.
Since what?
The UK has grown exactly. Look at it. Since Brexit, the UK has grown exactly the same as Germany has.
Is that true? We've grown the same amount because we've also fallen a lot more. So is he using like dodgy growth statistics here? That's what it seems like.
Mr. Speaker. But not only that, we are taking advantage of Brexit to deliver...
Also, Germany are far more exposed to the Russian invasion of Ukraine than we are. So their numbers are very low, considering like the problems that they have. You know, they're very gas dependent on Russia. I think they're a lot more dependent on trade with Russia. Germany performs worse in the EU. Yeah, so you know, it's very slick comparing us to Germany, which is the country that's been most impacted by, I think, global factors. If we're being honest here.
For the people across...
Well, Germany and I think the Baltic countries.
across the UK, whether it's the fishing and farming communities of Scotland, whether it's through the 2 new free ports that we've just announced. But, Mr. Speaker, the difference...
The free ports are linked to crime, Chief. There's not many benefits of free ports. I think there's one in Ireland where a lot of the planes are manufactured there. I think that's one of the few benefits of free ports. But that's not going to happen in the UK, let's be honest. It's just ridiculous argument after ridiculous argument with this geezer.
Between his party and ours
He's
is
gish
that
galloping.
we respect referendums.
He's gish galloping here.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. Taken together, 2022 and 2023 are expected to be the worst years for living standards since the 1930s, and the economy...
So, members of the audience, what happened during the 1930s? I'll wait for your answers.
...is expected to perform worse than sanction-hit Russia.
There we go,
so
boom.
as the Brexit ship sinks, with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition at the helm...
Yo, what's with the drive-by? Why you got to go after Starmer? Leave him be, man. He can't defend himself because he's very weak.
Does he blame those Scots who want to jump aboard the independence...
Oh, really? Really? It was shut down? Why was it shut down? Germany is performing like really badly. Trust me, it's not looking too great for the big Germans. But they're going to do better than us.
Lifeboat.
Let's go back.
The independence lifeboat. Blame those Scots who want to jump aboard the independence lifeboat.
Yeah, fair. I don't know. I think this guy is maybe better than Ian Blackford. Maybe.
Mr. Speaker, the number one factor that is impacting people's living standards, inflation, caused...
What? Oh, no. Okay.
...by high energy prices as a result of a war in Ukraine.
That's not true, though. It's not just, it's not just that. That's not just the energy crisis. The main issues we have, right, are the lack of gas storage we have in this country. That's why we're paying the highest energy bills in the world. That's one of the reasons why. We're not doing a windfall tax like other European nations are, which means we're not funding money back into people's pockets effectively and helping them with the energy crisis, which other countries are doing, and the EU are looking at doing that as well. I think the EU are being sued, I think, by ExxonMobil over that, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. We are facing increased food bills down to the fact that we don't have the farming and logistics staff you need to get food from farm to the supermarket or to the shops. That's another problem. And then, in the words of Matt Smith, and then we have import checks that are adding further costs, customs and all sorts. We're not doing full checks like the EU are, but we're doing import checks. And those non-tariff barriers, according to the London School of Economics for 2021, added 6% to our food inflation. Food inflation now being at like 13%. Ridiculous arguments from this man, like blaming everything on the war in Ukraine. Because once that war ends, right, you're not going to see a dramatic, upswing in living standards because we're still facing these other problems. If my man dealt with the price gouging of the energy companies, we would not be in this mess. But my man, that's the problem with PMQs is, Starmer gets 6 questions and he often swings and doesn't really hit much. My man gets 2 and he's hit the target twice. He's making Sunak come up with ridiculous arguments and he can't follow up on any of it.
Mr. Speaker, it's got nothing to do with Brexit, and that's why the government is taking significant action, supporting every family with £900 this winter. But what I would say to him...
But again, energy bills are going up way more than £900. That's the problem, Chief. That's the problem. I think that the energy bills went up 50% in 2021 and went up again in 2022. If you're not on a fixed tariff, you're in big trouble.
Rather than obsess about constitutional arrangements, focus on delivering for the people of Scotland. That's what we will do.
David Johnson.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, now we go to the time of Conservative MPs begging the Prime Minister for levelling up money. Let's see how many we get.
Of my constituents, Gary and Sarah Andrews, died just 23 minutes after she was born. When they asked questions about that, the parents were told that these things happen and that if they had to listen to the concerns of every mother, they would be overrun. Thanks to dogged campaigning by Gary and Sarah and other parents whose babies had died avoidably, Nottingham University Hospitals Trust was found to have systemic failures, and last week was given the highest fine that's ever been given for failings in maternity care. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this case, this situation, has to serve not just as a watershed moment for having the highest standards of maternity care, but also that when things do go wrong in something like an NHS trust or another public body, they have to be open and honest and transparent about their failings so that people can get the truth and not have it hidden from them.
I think he's right on a couple of different counts. One of the issues I think they would raise is staffing levels. That staffing levels are very low, so it's very difficult for them to deal with all the complaints and concerns that parents have. But I think that, like sometimes medical professionals, I think especially towards women, will just kind of palm them off and say, it's nothing, or it's a minor problem, or it'll sort itself out. Especially when you're talking about, I think babies, they are incredibly, way more vulnerable than adults are. And I think even if you increase staffing, I think there's a culture there that needs to be tackled. When it comes to, investigations within the medical field, like I think because people are scared of losing their licenses and being found out and potentially being sent to prison, there's kind of like the same thing that the police do, where they just kind of shut up shop and kind of fall in line, fall into close ranks, or whatever the phrases are. And I think that it has to be more accessible for public inquiries to happen into this stuff, because it's not talking about one or two here. I think you mentioned 4 or 5 potential cases, and these cases can take years and can be very expensive for families to deal with. So, a lot of sympathy there for the family.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very sorry to hear about the tragic case that my honourable friend raises, and I know the whole House will join me in sending our thoughts to Gary and Sarah. We want to make sure that the NHS is the best and safest place
The hell's your friend spending so much money on food? Does he run a restaurant or something?
in the world to give birth, and the NHS has taken steps to improve, but cases such as the one that my honourable friend raises highlight that more must be done. Nottingham University Trust is receiving support from the expert maternity improvement advisors, and nationally the Royal College is implementing the recommendations from the independent Ockenden report, together with £127 million of extra investment. But my honourable friend is absolutely right. When situations like this do arise, transparency is paramount, so we can seek answers and make improvements.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's nearly 10 years since the tragic death of 9-year-old Ella Roberta, the first person ever to have air pollution listed on her death certificate. Yesterday's Environmental Improvement Plan pledges to improve air quality, but the government's targets are for 2040. That's a whole generation away. I don't think that's fast enough, and neither does Ella's mum, Rosamond Adu Kissi-Deborah. So on her mum's behalf, will the Prime Minister agree to meet us both to discuss the life-saving measures in a new proposed bill called Ella's Law?
I think with air pollution getting worse, like, the best example I can give you, because I don't know too many of these kind of things, is the bus station in the town centre where I live in, right? And you can Google it. It's Northampton bus station, I think. It's in a very congested area, so what happens is a lot of the buses there get caught at the traffic lights, and so the pollution in that area gets really bad, to the point where shops were complaining their staff would smell like cars and pollution, I guess, because the pollution in the area was so bad. And there were times when certain days when the council wouldn't monitor the pollution levels in the area, because I think they knew it was illegal levels. At least that's what the article I was reading kind of said. So especially in bigger cities, like as we move to electric vehicles, I think the situation will be a lot better, a lot better. But when it comes to air pollution, like, there will be a lot more children suffering from things like asthma and other kind of illnesses, and potentially dying, like in this case here, from air pollution, because in certain areas, especially in cities, the air pollution can be really, really bad.
Mr. Speaker, it's obviously very sad to hear the case of Ella, and our thoughts and hearts go out to her family. With regard to the legislation, as my honourable friend the Environment Secretary will be making a statement later today, we are confident that the measures we are putting in place are not only legally binding, but also world-leading in tackling air quality. The record...
But then, it's 2040, Chief. Like, let's be honest here, you're going to be going back into banking by then, or maybe you'll be retired speaking to private healthcare firms in California. Like, 2040 is a long way away, and you can do a lot better in the meantime.
Over the past 10 years is one where every single air particulate has been reduced, with binding targets to continue reducing them in future, and indeed the Environment Act makes sure that we have the capability, accountability and ambition we need to make all the effective interventions to drive down air pollution.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, noise pollution will be a big thing as well, which will hopefully help. But with the air pollution, as long as we can produce the energy in a greener way via renewables or nuclear energy, I think it could be a great help to us. We've been given £400 to help from last year. Even the rich, so it's not means tested. Worry what happens when that runs out, as I'm not entitled to any other help. Yeah, I mean, it's just the way the money was dished out was a huge problem, especially since if you live in the rented sector, the money went to the landlord, I think, instead of to the renters, which doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm very concerned for a lot of people when it comes to the energy bills.
Compared to what some people seem to believe, 82% of the jobs in our economy are in the private sector, compared to 18% in the public sector.
We are world-beating in using the phrase world-beating. Gonna sneeze. Okay, let me go back because I didn't hear the first part of his question.
Jobs in our economy are in the private. Compared to what some people seem to believe, 82% of the jobs in our economy are in the private sector, compared to 18% in the public sector. Most of those private sector jobs will be in small businesses, the small businesses that we will depend upon for wealth creation and prosperity in the future. Will my right honourable friend consider bringing in a small business test across government so that every regulation we produce, every bit of legislation we produce will help, not hinder, small businesses? And does he share my ambition that every white van man and woman and every white coat tech worker in this country will regard the Conservative Party as their natural champions?
So with a lot of what he just said there, my brain kind of melted a bit because he's kind of boring. But it's kind of nonsense, creating legislation to not impact small businesses and look at the impacts and stuff. Like, you can add impact assessment reports onto, the impact it would have on small businesses, but you're adding a lot more kind of bureaucracy onto any laws you want to pass, which doesn't really make any sense, let's be honest, and it's a lot more work for a lot less benefit, let's be honest there, and, this has already been tried and failed badly. It doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, my right honourable friend is absolutely right, and this government is proud to join with him in supporting small businesses. I'm pleased to tell my honourable friend that we do have a small business test to consider.
Tried what? Cleaning up what mess?
Whether the impacts of regulatory changes will disproportionately affect small and micro businesses. I will make sure that we are applying that test rigorously, and he'll be pleased to know that many small businesses will benefit from billions of pounds in business rates reductions this coming financial year, as well as our annual investment allowance, which at £1 million is the most generous tax incentive for investment for small businesses anywhere in the world.
And McLaughlin.
Mr. Speaker, this morning, just 2 hours ago, I launched the APPG on prepayment meters. I did so because most people on these meters are on very low incomes, and yet they pay more per unit of energy than the Prime Minister does. They pay higher daily standing charges than the Prime Minister. They're automatically disconnected from their energy supply the second they run out of money. And perversely, right now, record numbers of people are being forced onto them by the energy companies. Can the Prime Minister even begin to imagine how terrifying that moment is when the lights go out and everything shuts down? And will he agree with me, rather than reading out, please, what he's got written in front of him, will he just agree with me that what I've just described is completely unfair?
And, that framing there was really beautiful stuff here, because when you look at it, people on prepayment meters are paying a lot more for their energy, and they have to pay a standing charge as well, versus people who aren't on prepayment meters, which you would think doesn't make sense because the money's front-loaded. But, I think British Gas recently said they're going to stop forcing people onto prepayment meters. I'd want to see, the government offer legislation to stop this sort of stuff happening.
Mr. Speaker, the government does recognise the challenges facing those on prepayment meters, and that's why the government is taking action. The Secretary of State has set out 5 very specific points on prepayment meters. Energy suppliers are being spoken to make sure that they treat customers with...
Pass legislation, you donut. Forget talking to them. Pass legislation. Like this lot are price gouging us. The suppliers, the ones who generate the energy, are price gouging us. Like, put in legislation. You're the goddamn government. Don't speak to them. Just say this is the new legislation.
Respect and flexibility that they deserve. And finally, Ofgem have announced that they are launching a review into supplier practices in relation to prepayment meters. But all of this, Mr. Speaker, comes on top of the considerable financial support that this government has provided to help out.
After 8,000 residents of Redditch signed my petition to bring back chemotherapy to the Alex, the Trust reversed their decision to leave it at Kidderminster.
Jeez, big up Kidderminster.
Win for our town. And I'm grateful to the local acute trust for listening so carefully and changing their mind. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's right that the acute trust can change its mind on the provision
My man furiously texting or tweeting like, get off your phone, big man.
of maternity and paediatric services so that women can give birth in our wonderful town of Redditch?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend has clearly been a fantastic advocate for the Alex and for her constituents. We have awarded £10.5 million to the local trust, and I understand that some of that funding is being used to improve maternity and paediatric services at the nearby Worcestershire Royal. My honourable friend will know that these operational decisions are being made by integrated care boards, and I know that she will continue to make her views known.
Andrew Gwynn. Mr. Speaker, if I had £1 for every time I'd heard the Prime Minister's weak excuses, I'd be able to pay the former Chancellor's tax bill. Because it was last July that it was reported that the National Crime Agency had investigated the Right Honourable Member for Stratford-on-Avon. The then Prime Minister knew, the media knew. We all knew. It's inconceivable that the current Prime Minister didn't know. So why did he choose to ignore it?
Clip that up, because that man he just told the truth there. You know, the people knew, the country knew, the media knew. How did Sunak not know? You know, it genuinely beggars belief.
Mr. Speaker, I appointed an independent advisor to fully...
Oh, he's an NPC. Look, he's smiling because he knows it's a crappy answer.
Examine the matter, establish facts, and report back. That's the process.
Bro, you just had to read what was in the Independent and the FT and the Observer. They laid it out for you. They didn't. You know, you could have given Sir Laurie Magnus the day off. You didn't have to get him to write a report and spend a week writing nonsense because we already knew.
Party opposite called for. That's a process that we followed.
We already knew.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Prime Minister commissioned me to propose 30 ways...
Let's not forget my man was threatening journalists as well with legal action. Let's not forget that either. That should be a sackable offence. You know, maybe not in the ministerial code, but you can't go around threatening journalists with libel action over, you know, nonsense that you are guilty of.
...to boost growth and make Britain the most competitive country in the world. So far, we're underway with about half of them. But some of the most valuable, like reforming ponderous and expensive utilities regulators or building on our international lead in open banking, haven't moved at all. So will he meet with me to discuss how to channel our inner Nigel Lawsons and unblock the arteries of our economy with low-cost, pro-competition, supply-side reforms?
Prime Minister. Mr.
Well, we have big supply issues because of the B word, Brexit, amongst other things. So, yeah, you know, good luck with that.
Speaker, my honourable friend has a long track record in advocating for and implementing policies that increase our competitiveness and reform the supply side of our economy. His report was fantastic, and I look forward to meeting with him to discuss them further and help drive growth in this country.
The man looks like a Bond villain.
Mr. Speaker, ambulance waiting times are out of control. My constituent contacted me regarding her 93-year-old mother who lay collapsed on the ground at home for 17 hours and then queued for 13 hours to get into the hospital. And yet on Monday, the Prime Minister said he had his fingers crossed that ambulance waiting times would be reduced. Does he really think that's enough?
No, well, Mr. Speaker, if the honourable lady actually looks, we published on Monday a comprehensive plan to reduce wait times in A&E and with ambulances, backed with more funding and reform of the system, more beds, more ambulances, more staff. And indeed, Mr. Speaker...
Right, where are you going to magic this staff up from when people are leaving the industry because they can get paid more or they can do less stressful work for about equal money? Like, what are you talking about? Like, are you gonna, when they talk about the amount of staff they add, you really need to look at the net numbers, and that's something the media needs to do a lot better of. Look at the net numbers to see what's going on, because you can say, oh, we added, 100 extra ambulance drivers. Can't remember the exact term for it. Paramedics, right? If 300 leave, you've lost 200 paramedics, so you've made the situation is worse. Nigel Lawson, who's Nigel Lawson?
It was a plan.
Was he the Bond villain guy?
That was warmly welcomed by all of those working in emergency care and the ambulance services. They recognise that this plan will deliver reduced waiting times and improve care across...
Yeah, is it going to be enough that if you reduce waiting times for an hour when someone's waited 13 hours, it's not an achievement, is it, big man?
...the country, including in Labour run Wales, where there are some things we can benefit them from.
Jerome Mayo. Mr. Speaker, if you grow up in Norfolk and you want to be a dentist, the nearest place you can train is in Birmingham or in London. So it's not really surprising, is it, that in Norfolk we have a dearth of dentists, whether it's NHS or private. We also know that where there is a dental training school, more dentists end up working locally. So will my right honourable friend agree to look again at the benefits of establishing a dental training school alongside the excellent medical school at the University of East Anglia?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend will know that there are around 400 dentists with NHS activity in Norfolk and Waveney, but he's right, the Centres of Dental Development build on the existing local infrastructure to help retain and recruit dentists, and I would advise him to encourage his local integrated care board to look at proposals for one of those centres in his area.
Mary Kelly Ford.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister once said that he didn't have any working class friends. So we may not be aware that today 500,000 hard-working people are on strike, including in his own constituency. Tory Britain isn't working. Is the Prime Minister going to get a grip and negotiate with working people, or does he intend being remembered as the PM who silenced and sacked hard-working nurses, paramedics, teachers, rail workers and firefighters in a cost-of-living crisis?
Well, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to teachers, we've actually given teachers the highest pay rise in 30 years. It includes a 9% pay rise for newly qualified teachers and record investment.
So you've underfunded them for 12 years. You've given them a quite huge pay rise, but it's still below inflation. I mean, you take into account the inflation of the last 12 years. When you look at it in context, it don't look good for you, Chief. Let's be real here. Public sector workers have gotten consistently below inflation pay rises. I think when inflation was around the 3% figure, public sector workers would get about a 1% pay rise. So you offering a decent pay rise now won't help the situation, considering it's still below inflation.
In their training and development, I am clear that our children's education is precious and they deserve to be in school today being taught.
Taught by teachers in a teaching shortage. That's a big problem. I mean, we've been through this, about 20 minutes ago. Like, this is just nonsense. My man's looking deranged. I need to... These pauses are not doing anyone any favours here.
Actually, the party opposite would do well to say that the strikes are wrong and we should be backing our school children.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sadly, suicide is the biggest killer of young people under 35 in the UK. My constituent, Andy Airy, along with Tim Owen and Mike Palmer, are the three dads walking. Andy, Tim and Mike each tragically lost their precious daughters, Sophie, Emily and Beth, to suicide, and have campaigned tirelessly through charity walking for suicide awareness and prevention to be included in the school curriculum. I've been humbled to support them, including joining them on their UK walk as they came through Penrith, with their petition, which is due for parliamentary debate on the 13th of March, and with my early day motion, which has support from right across the House. Would the Prime Minister join me in paying tribute to the three dads? And would he meet with me and the three dads to discuss suicide prevention and ultimately save young lives in the future?
I think that's good. I think teaching about kind of these sorts of things in school would be a great thing. The problem is you need funding to do that stuff. You need funding for mental health services, and this government have cut that kind of stuff from schools, amongst other things. But a lot more needs to be done. Maybe reforms around mental health and teaching kids about depression and like the kind of mechanisms they can use to get help. Because I think schools, typically there's a school counsellor, I think, in a lot of schools.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course I pay tribute to Andy, Tim and Mike, especially for channeling their own personal tragedies into such positive action to prevent this happening to other families. That is inspiring and they deserve enormous credit. The government is taking action to improve the provision of mental health services for young people in schools and colleges, but I would be delighted to meet with him and Andy, Mike and Tim to discuss what more we can do.
It's going to require funding, and unless they put the money on the table, it's not, warm words aren't going to resolve the problems.
Blackford.
Jeez, the man. He returns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that welcome. Ordinary people didn't need to hear an IMF forecast to understand that the UK economy is the worst performer amongst the leading nations in the world. They live with it every day. People know their energy bills are through the roof. They know that 750,000 households face defaulting on their mortgages while house prices fall. And they know that food prices are rising at a record rate of 16.7% as of today. The Prime Minister is 100 days in office, his party 13 years in power. In all that time, does the Prime Minister ever reflect that the only thing that the Tory party has been good at is pushing people into poverty?
Jeez, my man's still out here.
Mr. Speaker, it is wonderful to hear from the right honourable gentleman, and lovely to see him in his place. What I would say is that we're continuing to deliver for people across the UK, including and in Scotland. He mentioned poverty. Poverty today lower than when the Conservatives first came into office.
Wait. Are you saying poverty right now, right, using the same metrics? Because I know you guys change definitions and stuff. You're saying poverty right now is lower than it was in 2010. I call BS on that. I call absolute BS on that. There's no way. Ain't no goddamn way that's true.
Inequality lower than when the Conservatives first came into office, and the number of people in low pay, the lowest on record.
That sounds like nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in my constituency there is a great sense of shock and disbelief following last night's horrific dog attack that killed a 4-year-old girl. The police investigation is still going on, and it wouldn't be appropriate to speculate on the circumstances. But it would mean a great deal if, on behalf of the House, the Prime Minister could send our condolences to the family and to the community, and to thank the emergency services for dealing with the situation with their customary compassion and professionalism.
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend and send my condolences, and I'm sure the whole House's condolences, to the girl's family and the community after this horrific incident. And I join him in thanking the emergency services. They have responded rapidly and professionally, and I know that my honourable friend himself will be supporting them and his constituents during this difficult time.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This past weekend...
Oops.
Can I blame the pain? Can I blame the painkillers, please? Apologies, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. This past weekend, I visited a charity which was hosting an exhibition in my constituency about metastatic breast cancer, which claims 31 lives each day in the United Kingdom. And the women there asked me to convey at the first opportunity to the government the need for more awareness, more support, more research and more drug availability. Can I ask the Prime Minister if he will do that, if he will help to bring that support, but also I have written to the Scottish Government asking for their support, if in his next meetings with the First Minister he would mention it to her.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I pay tribute to the charity that the Honourable Lady mentioned and for the work they do? She's absolutely right. Awareness is key in tackling and identifying breast cancer symptoms early. One of the reasons why we're investing more in diagnostic and screening tools to make sure that we can detect more cancers earlier and treat them and ultimately save people's lives. I would be happy to pick up this particular topic with the First Minister when I next speak to her and ensure that we are working together to improve cancer services for everyone, regardless of where they live in the UK.
So the issue is that the Tories have decimated preventative care, or the idea of preventative care. So, the first port of call is you go to see your GP and your GP can offer referrals. The problem with that is it's very hard to get a GP appointment, which makes it very difficult to get anything done with preventative care. Like the system doesn't work anymore. By the time you realise something's wrong is when you start feeling really ill and then you try and get to the hospital, but that's where you can get other difficulties. Referrals can take months. You can get cancellations amongst other things. So if we had a proper system where we had the first point of call, which is the GP system, working properly, we would not be in the situation I think we're in now, or at least as bad a situation. But the problem is the Conservatives have made severe cuts to the GP services, and also the fact that a lot of it's being privatised. So these kind of GPs are run as kind of small businesses, and a lot of American firms kind of bought them up, and instead of filling them up with GPs, have filled them up with nurses who are a lot cheaper, but who can't offer you the same level of care or expertise a GP can do.
Charlie Spock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the United Kingdom government's negotiations with the EU regarding the Northern Ireland Protocol, would the Prime Minister kindly confirm to the House that the sovereignty of the United Kingdom and its four nations will not be compromised?
Absolutely. Bro, this is what pisses me off. Other countries have internal borders. Other countries have internal trade borders. They even exist, right, within the EU, but no one questions the sovereignty of Lapland in goddamn Finland. Jesus, man, these people are honestly just so wet, so boring. We have, there are goddamn federalised systems in Europe as well that have a lot of autonomy, that are still part of, the greater nation. A bad example might be looking at the Russian Federation, where you have a lot of autonomy in areas of Russia, but they are still part of the Russian Federation. If Northern Ireland is under a different system for goods, it doesn't mean that they are no longer part of the United Kingdom. Genuinely, oh my god, these guys suck. They're just rubbish, honestly. What a donut. What an absolute donut.
Mr. Speaker, I can give my honourable friend that assurance. I know this is something that he cares passionately about. The implementation of the protocol is having an impact for communities in Northern Ireland. That's why it needs to be addressed, and that's what we are attempting to do through constructive dialogue. But the goal in that must be to ensure Northern Ireland's place in our precious union.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the election of the fascist Israeli government in December last year, there has been an increase in human rights violations against Palestinian civilians, including children.
Very surprising question.
Can the Prime Minister tell us how he is challenging what Amnesty and other human rights organisations are referring to an apartheid state?
Well,
that's very surprising, that question was asked.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady also failed to mention the horrific attacks on civilians inside Israel as well. And it's important...
Yeah, it was on Holocaust Memorial Day.
To remain calm and urge all sides to strive for peace, and that's very much what I will do as Prime Minister and in the conversations that I've had with the Israeli Prime Minister.
Sir John Hayes, final.
Mr. Speaker, in 2016, the British people had the wisdom and foresight to take back control from foreign lawmakers. And when they did so, they believed we were taking back control of our borders. Yet since that time, we have faced wave after wave of illegal migration. So will my right honourable friend, without further delay, bring forward the necessary legislation to turn back the tide and fulfil the promise that was made to the British people then?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend makes an excellent point. That's why one of this government's 5 priorities and promises to the British people is indeed to stop the boats. We will introduce new legislation that makes it unequivocally clear that if you arrive in this country illegally, you will not be able to stay. We will swiftly detain you and remove you to your own country or a safe third alternative. That's the right and responsible way to tackle this problem.
All right, so let's think about this one, right? It's not illegal to claim asylum, so anyone crossing the English Channel to claim asylum in the UK, it's not. Sorry, I'm just replying to someone, very unprofessional, right? So it's not illegal to do that. We know that for a fact, right? The other issue is you can't send them back to a safe country, because the problem with that is we're out of the Dublin III agreement, which allows that to happen. So you can't send them back to another third country. You can't deport them until their asylum claim has been heard and been rejected. So you have a situation where there's not much you can do. And Brexit, I think, has incentivised more channel crossings than ever before, because they know that the UK is going to have to hear their claims, and the claims get heard faster in the UK than they do in France, because France are dealing with a lot more cases. Just going to check the comments quickly. Northern Ireland Protocol is Ulster Unionism's best hope of maintaining the union. As long as there is no land, customs and SPS border, many nationals will be content with having Northern Ireland in the best of both worlds. Horrible policy, human rights violations coming. Is it me, or the number of weeks the Conservative side of the House has been so quiet and way down on sound? Yeah, I mean, obviously I have no control over this stuff, but it feels like there's, I mean, do you know, like, we'll go over a clip, right? This is the situation with the Conservative Party, right? I've got this clip loaded already. Which one? Well, we'll go over these two, right? This is the situation with the Conservative Party, right? So you got this geezer here. I've covered. I'm going to cover this in a video, right? So he gets asked, what are the Brexit benefits of name 3 Brexit benefits, right? And the situation is that the Conservative MPs are struggling to kind of defend the government here. So if we watch this clip quickly.
The biggest impact we've seen over the last couple of years is probably Britain's ability to fulfil its own vaccine programme.
Well, you'll be aware, of course, the independent website Full Facts say that's not true, and even the boss of our own MHRA, Dr. June Rain, has also said that's not true. So,
well, we could have
can we
done
strike that one out?
You're absolutely right. You could have done it within the EU, but.
So we could have done it whilst we're a member of the EU. So, the Tory talking points are just pathetic. And so I think that's one of the reasons why the noise is down. You got this geezer. He was asked about the case with, the difference between Nadim Zahawi and Suella Braverman, when both break the ministerial code, yet one's been fired and the other one hasn't. He gets asked about that, and then he gets this
again, and then he reappointed her on that basis.
So do you think Nadim Zahawi...
It's because she apologised.
She's owned up to her mistake, and she won't do it again, and then he reappointed her on that basis.
So do you think Nadim Zahawi should be allowed back in if he says, look, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done that? Do you think he should be allowed back in?
Well, no, but that's not really the point.
The situation is that they're having to defend absolute dross, and the problem is, there's no energy. There's no energy to defend that stuff. Like, I mean, look at the answers my man has given. But look at the answers. Like, I think it makes sense the noise is down. You've got a guy with literally negative charisma in Rishi Sunak. You've got the polls. They look like they're going to get absolutely battered. And I think they're a party that don't know what to do, because this is their third leader in the space of less than a year. I genuinely think that's one of the reasons why they're struggling so much, is because they are rudderless, absolutely rudderless, and they don't want to make any noise. Like, maybe they just don't care that much. When Johnson was there, at least he brought energy, he brought bluster. He could actually, he had jokes. Rubbish jokes, but jokes, and nonetheless. Sunak has nothing. Like, there's no charisma. Basic talking points, minimal energy, very boring, and that's fine when you're winning, when the country's doing okay. You can be like David Cameron, negative charisma, all this kind of stuff. But when you're struggling, you want a guy who's going to energise you a bit, especially given how badly they're doing in the polls. And the Conservative Party are not doing great when it comes to that stuff. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. I think that will end the stream, because I I think PMQs is over. I don't think there's going to be too much more of interest here.
Disasters and consequent state cover-ups deserve nothing less, and these injustices must never ever be allowed. If a Hillsborough order existed in 19...
I see. This is about Hillsborough. So it's been found out. I think more information's come out about the police being absolutely inept and potentially, I think, being corrupt in the case of Hillsborough. So if anything comes out more about Hillsborough, I'll probably try and cover it on the channel at some point, just because it just shows you how damaging it can be when the police, the media, and politicians turn actively against essentially a nightmare scenario. An absolute nightmare scenario. I've got like a few more videos I've got to do for today, or to actually record for today. You can see I've got all these tabs open. So what these are all like, I think, Newsnight tabs. I goddamn hope there are. Yeah, pretty much all of these are like Newsnight tabs I want to cover in a video where I'm going to go over a compilation of their clips and just kind of react to them a bit. Purely because it's better than doing it, I think, one by one. I could do a much longer form video on it and kind of debunk all the nonsense. But yeah, we'll cut the... Oops, my bad. We'll cut the stream here, and I'll see you guys when I release a video in about an hour.